The Scent of Crimson Part 1. Chapter 1, Bergamot and Bone Dust. The apartment was too quiet for a murder. Cassandra Vale stood just inside the threshold, one gloved hand gently resting on the doorframe, her nose catching it before her eyes did. Not blood. That would come later. Bergamot. Citrusy. Bitter. Clean. It was the kind of scent you use to finish a moment, not start one. Her heels clicked once across the wood floor. Then stopped. She stood still. Waiting. The air was layered. Fresh varnish on a frame. Old wine soaked into the carpet. But beneath it all, a subtle powderiness. Bone dust. Not literal, no. But something in the calcium-rich air told her the body was nearby. And not freshly dead. Cassandra's head tilted slightly. Her auburn hair, tied low, brushed the collar of her dark wool coat. She was perfectly still. Still enough to feel the patterns behind silence. She whispered to no one. He lit a candle. The detective behind her, Detective Reeve, all cheap cologne and impatient pacing, cleared his throat. Excuse me. Bergamot oil. Burned briefly. Likely a diffuser or slow match. He lit it before the kill. Reeve scratched the back of his neck. Why would someone light a candle before murdering someone? Cassandra moved forward, past the couch, toward the open doorway. Because he didn't murder him. Not in his mind. The body lay in the artist's studio. Or rather, was arranged there. Arms outstretched, palms up, legs crossed neatly at the ankle. The victim, Lucien Hark, had once been one of London's most celebrated expressionists. Now, his expression was gone. His face had been gently covered in raw silk. Not a mask, but a veil. A statement. On the easel behind him, a blank canvas. And taped to it, a dried sprig of rosemary. Cassandra knelt slowly. Her breath steady. She didn't touch anything. Not yet. The smell here was different. Beneath the bergamot lingered the faintest trace of charcoal, linseed oil, and her perfume. Vintage. Long discontinued. Only one bottle remained. Locked in her drawer at home. That's not possible. She didn't speak the thought. Instead, she focused. She studied the folds of the silk. The angle of the neck. The choice of light, natural, filtered through white gauze curtains. Whoever staged this hadn't killed in anger. They'd killed in composition. Detective Reeve finally broke the silence. There's no forced entry. No signs of a struggle. No defensive wounds. Coroner says the COD was a clean injection of succinylcholine. Paralysis. No resistance. Cassandra stood. No resistance because he knew the killer. Friend? Worse. An admirer. She walked over to the canvas. Gently, she peeled back the tape holding the rosemary in place. Behind it, faint pencil markings had been scrawled. A single sentence. Muse, forgive me. You were always first. Cassandra's breath caught, but not from surprise. From memory. She had read that line before. In a letter she burned 10 years ago. Candle Chapter 2, Crimson as Intent. Cassandra Vale did not believe in coincidences. Coincidences lacked intent. This, she thought, as she stood at the fogged window of her temporary flat that overlooked the Thames, had intention written in crimson. The same line. The same scent. The same precision. Muse, forgive me. You were always first. She'd burned that letter a decade ago. Handwritten in sepia ink. No signature. No return address. Just the phrase. A goodbye, of sorts. Or perhaps an opening act. She turned from the window and opened the small leather case she always traveled with. Not a briefcase. Not a laptop bag. A case of scents, perfume vials, oil dabs, rare aromatic resins sealed in glass. She lifted one now. Pale gold. Faintly iridescent. Labeled, Veil number 9, discontinued. Her scent. Delicate. Herbal. Notes of iris, bergamot, and vetiver. Softly melancholic. She hadn't worn it in years. The moment she smelled it at the crime scene, a part of her past self blinked awake. She let the cap rest on her wrist, took one slow breath. Then whispered. You shouldn't know this. The walls of her flat were bare. Cassandra kept hotel rooms and rentals empty, impersonal. She didn't like sentiment bleeding into a scene. But tonight, she allowed one indulgence. On the desk, a single red folder. She opened it now, fingers moving slowly, reverently. Inside, her own notes from a closed case. Never filed. Never archived. Because it wasn't a case. It was a correspondence. From him. 10 years ago, she had helped profile a man known as the White Garden Killer. He had been methodical, sophisticated, surgical in his arrangements. But what no one knew, and what Cassandra never shared, was that one of the victim scenes bore a symbolic structure that mirrored a painting she had created in college. Only 5 people had ever seen that painting. One of them, apparently, was him. And after that case closed, long after the headlines died down, the letters began. Always unsigned. Always beautifully written. Always echoing details only Cassandra would recognize. And the final one, the one she burned, had ended with the exact same phrase left at the Lucian Hark scene. Muse, forgive me. You were always first. Now it had returned. Which meant 2 things. 1, the killer wasn't finished. 2, he'd been waiting for her. Her burner phone buzzed on the nightstand. Text from Detective Reeve. Crime Scene 2. West End Loft. Similar arrangement. No witnesses. You'll want to see it. Now. Cassandra didn't respond. She had already begun packing her coat and gloves. Before leaving, she returned to her scent case and chose a new vial, one she hadn't used in years. Jasmine and black cedar. A scent for facing things long buried. She dabbed it on her throat. No makeup. No earrings. Just the steel pin in her hair and the storm behind her eyes. As she locked the door behind her, the light on her voice recorder glowed green. Still recording. She had forgotten to turn it off. Or perhaps, he had turned it on. Chapter 3, The Perfume She Can't Place. The West End loft sat above a shuttered antique bookstore, its iron staircase slick with fog and faint graffiti. London was quiet tonight. Even the Thames seemed to hold its breath. Cassandra Vale didn't use crime scene tape as a boundary. She let scent tell her when she'd crossed into something sacred. The moment she stepped over the threshold, her posture changed, shoulders relaxed, spine lengthened. She drew in a slow breath through her nose, eyes closing. Not bergamot, she murmured. Something else. Clove. No. Too warm. Cardamom. No, too soft. Black cherry with aldehyde. There it was. Something artificial. Synthetic sweet with a dry base, like silk rubbed against ash. It didn't belong. Detective Reeve stood off to the side, sipping lukewarm coffee and clearly fighting the urge to pace. Another scene set like a painting, he muttered. Same pose. Different victim. And the killer left a signature. Cassandra opened her eyes. Which was? Reeve gestured to the victim's hand, delicately curled around the stem of a shattered perfume bottle. Its contents spilled across the white rug, soaking the fibers a pale gray. We bagged the bottle, but there's no label. The text said it doesn't match anything on record. Imported maybe. Or niche indie garbage. It's neither, Cassandra said. She stepped closer. It's familiar. The room was minimal, intentional. No clutter. No furniture to distract from the staging. The victim, a woman in her 30s, lay diagonally across a chaise lounge positioned at the center of the room. One arm draped down, her head tilted upward, not limp, but purposeful. Her lips were painted a deep maroon. And on her wrist, a string of blue glass beads. Cassandra crouched beside the chaise. The scent in the room was denser now, sweet but sterile. A fake memory. He's trying to create a moment, she whispered. But it's an illusion. Like a staged photograph of a dream. You're saying it didn't happen here? Reeve asked. No. I'm saying this already happened. Just not to her. She moved to the window and opened it just slightly. Fresh air swept in, cool, damp, clean. It made the remaining scent stand out sharply. It hit her then. Not as recognition, but as dislocation. She'd smelled this blend once before. In Prague. 17 years ago. Inside a ruined chapel that had been turned into an experimental scent installation. The artist had wanted to recreate grief. Cassandra had called it pretentious. But she had never forgotten the way it made her feel. And now, here it was again. You remember grief, don't you, Cassandra? The voice wasn't in the room. It was inside her. Unfolding like old paper. Reeve interrupted the silence. He left something else. A note. Typed this time. Folded into the lining of the victim's coat. Cassandra extended her gloved hand, palm up. Reeve passed it to her. One single sheet. Pale ivory. Coarse paper stock. Typed on a manual typewriter. No signature. If memory is a scent, what do you wear when you lie? Cassandra closed her eyes again. The killer was building something. Not a spree. Not even a statement. A fragrance. Each crime scene was a note in the blend. Lucien Hark had been the top note, bright, sharp, bergamot and rosemary. This woman. The heart note. Synthetic. Floral. Haunted. She was building toward the base. Toward something darker. Toward Cassandra herself. The room began to hum with memory. She felt it now. The killer wasn't ahead of her. He wasn't behind her either. He was beside her. Always has been. Chapter 4, Notes of Bergamot and Blood. The basement archive of the Metropolitan Police Headquarters was a cold, indifferent place, flanked by thick concrete walls, halogen lights, and locked drawers labeled with faded case codes no one wanted to remember. Cassandra Vale stood at the center of it all, hands clasped behind her back, coat buttoned to the neck. She wore the same scent she always did when visiting the dead past, sandalwood and cypress, clean and dry. Detective Reeve was less composed. You do realize I had to pull 4 favors just to get us in here, right? He muttered, unlocking the metal cabinet marked Archives Foreign Collab/Closed Cases. I only needed 1 file, she replied. The rest of the dead can stay sleeping. The file she asked for didn't exist on record under the name she remembered. She had to describe the smell of it instead. Prague. 2006. A chapel converted into a scent installation. 1 subject dead. 1 disappeared. All windows sealed with beeswax and salt. You'll find it under International Art Incident or Accidental Exposure. Reeve frowned. You're joking. I'm never joking about smell. The file was there. Red tagged. Slightly scorched at one corner. PR 601, incident at SV. Bartholomew's Chapel. 1 dead. 1 unfound. Report closed by foreign agency. Inside the folder, grainy photographs, an inventory sheet, and a report that read more like a warning than a debrief. Scent index, items found at scene. Cedar resin. Black amber. Expired bergamot oil. Iron-rich fluid with unknown preservative compound. Red pigment flakes, possibly blood-based. 1 empty vial labeled ex voto, v veil. V veil. The alias she used in Prague. To distance herself from Cassandra Vale. To bury what happened there. Someone remembered. Someone had archived her scent. She turned the inventory list slowly, as if afraid it might burn her fingers. There, typed at the bottom in smaller print. Note, Subject 02, unfound, was believed to be the original recipient of the grief blend. It was later determined that Subject 02 had contributed materials to the formulation, specifically, their blood and a sample of personal perfume. She stopped breathing for a moment. He hadn't recreated the scent. He'd recovered it. What the hell is this place? Reeve asked, flipping through the photos. Cassandra didn't answer. Because one photo had caught her attention. A blurred image of a broken bottle. Amber glass. A sprig of dried rosemary fused into its melted base. The same bottle from Lucien Hark's studio. He didn't make a new signature, she said softly. He's unsealing the old one. Meaning? Meaning he didn't just want me to find him. He wanted me to remember him. She pulled her gloves tighter. If he had access to the scent library in Prague, he had access to her DNA. To her blood. To the molecules she'd locked away years ago, both physically and emotionally. He wasn't copying her memories. He was orchestrating them. And the next note in the blend would be personal. As she returned the file to the drawer, Reeve's phone buzzed sharply. He glanced at it, then paled slightly. We've got another one, he said. Scenes already secured. Where? Old perfumery. Abandoned. Burned out 2 years ago. No cameras. But the first officer said the place smells like a funeral. Cassandra exhaled slowly, her voice low and certain. Then he's begun the bass notes. Chapter 5, The Woman in the Yellow Dress. The perfumery was a husk of beauty. Once the oldest fragrance house in South London, Maison d'Epine had burned 2 years ago under mysterious circumstances. The front sign still hung above the soot-streaked doorway, cracked down the middle like a forgotten vow. Cassandra stepped across the threshold without waiting for Reeve. Her steps were slow, deliberate, quiet. She didn't look first. She listened. To the way the fire had peeled the walls like bark. To the way silence hung too densely, like humidity without heat. And most of all, she listened to the scent. It was wrong. This place had once been jasmine, vetiver, rose absolute, bottles worth thousands, gone in flames. But now it smelled like something recreated from loss. Crushed yellow marigolds. Burnt lemon rinds. Iron-rich decay. Brightness turned bitter. It was the smell of a dress left in the sun too long. Of citrus gone soft. Of a room where memory was turned into ash and ritual. The body lay in the back showroom, once elegant, now collapsed under blackened beams. She was young. Mid-20s. Face down. Not posed. Not adorned. And most unsettling of all, not arranged. This one wasn't meant for anyone else to see, Cassandra said quietly. Reeve joined her, boots crunching on bits of broken glass and charred plaster. Weird thing is, he said, glancing around, she was found wearing a yellow dress that doesn't appear in any photo ID or missing persons record. But the me confirmed something else. What? She wasn't killed here. Not even close. She was embalmed. Cassandra's breath didn't hitch, but her hand brushed the edge of her coat, a subconscious protective gesture. Embalming wasn't for staging. It was for keeping. And the yellow dress. The color of sunlight. Of spring. Of forgiveness. She stepped closer and knelt carefully. Under the woman's outstretched arm was a folded slip of paper. The edges were soft. Touched. Handled often. The paper bore a scent of something long gone. Vanilla. Faint lavender. Paper mold. She unfolded it carefully. 7 lines of text, in faded black ink. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was her own. And when the dress falls. And the scent fails. And the color leaves your eyes. Don't ask me why I waited. I was never painting you. I was painting the space you left. That is what made it beautiful. She blinked. Hard. This wasn't written recently. This was from a journal she lost 12 years ago. A passage she never shared with anyone. Not even her therapist. And yet here it was, folded neatly beneath a stranger's body, left in a place Cassandra once said smelled like the end of things. He embalmed her, she said finally, her voice low and bitter, because he wanted to keep the scent intact. Not of her. Of the moment. Reeve looked at her, hesitant. Do you recognize the woman? No, she said. But she was never meant to be herself. She was meant to be me. She stood and looked around the room again, not for clues, not for prints. For color. The yellow dress. The citrus. The marigolds. All trying to evoke warmth, nostalgia, forgiveness. But the result was wrong. This wasn't peace. This was what a killer thinks forgiveness looks like when he's never actually felt it. He's trying to make amends, she murmured. To me. With bodies. As she stepped back into the scorched light of the front showroom, something caught her eye, an old scent wheel, warped from heat, propped against the far wall. Half the notes had melted away. But the quadrant 4 bass notes still remained intact. Amber. Musk. Leather. Smoke. One word had been scratched into the center with a knife. Finale. Chapter 6, Cassandra's Mirror Ritual. Cassandra Vale's scent room wasn't on any floor plan. It sat tucked behind a false wall in her townhouse, a private haven of control and stillness, built on routine and locked memory. The walls were matte black. The lighting low and indirect. No photographs. No books. No noise. Only her instruments. A narrow silver table. A mirrored wall. A collection of raw scent vials, each meticulously labeled. A leather-bound notebook, untouched by light. And above all, the ritual. She removed her gloves one finger at a time and placed them flat on the table. Next came the coat. Then the shoes. Silence swallowed everything. She stood barefoot on the cold slate floor, eyes closed, reaching for the vials in practiced order. Vetiver. Iris. Clove. Each scent, when uncapped, represented a piece of thought, focus, clarity, boundaries. She took one drop from each and pressed it to the inside of her wrist. Then neck. Then the hollow beneath her throat. She turned toward the mirror. It wasn't for vanity. It was a confrontation. She stared at herself, not to admire, not to study, but to anchor. You are here, she whispered. He is not. You choose what you feel. Not him. She opened her notebook, turned to the most recent page. Wrote a single word in perfect script. Yellow. A color not part of her usual palette. A color that had begun showing up too often. She added beneath it. Regret. Mimicry. Misuse. Then, instinct stilled her hand. Something was off. The scent in the air, just the faintest note. Wasn't hers. It wasn't any of the oils she kept. It was floral, but sharp. Medicinal. Lilac. She hadn't kept lilac in this room for years. Not since the Prague case. Not since him. She turned to the drawer where her discontinued samples were stored, vials sealed, taped, and signed. All untouched. Except one. It had been moved. Just slightly. The dust pattern betrayed it. She reached inside with gloved fingers and lifted the vial. The tape had been peeled, then reapplied. When she brought it to her nose. Lilac, and something deeper. Faint leather. She stepped back instinctively. Not fear. Recognition. On the mirror, where no writing should ever be, someone had scrawled a message in what looked like lipid oil and violet powder. Invisible at first. Then, under the light. It appeared. Just 3 words. You remember me. Cassandra didn't move. Didn't breathe. Because he wasn't taunting her now. He wasn't threatening. He was pleading. A slow breath escaped her lips as she whispered to the mirror. Then why do I wish I didn't? She wiped the mirror clean. Not frantically. Calm. Controlled. Then resealed the vial and logged it in her notes as breach, scent. Remnant. Not a memory. A message. He had been in the one place she had believed she could not be touched. Which meant she was no longer investigating a killer. She was walking back into his unfinished masterpiece. Chapter 7, the second scene, wrapped in blue. The call came just before dawn. A jogger found the body near the Thames, beneath the shadow of the Hungerford Bridge, where the concrete met mud and iron. The rain had washed the streets clean that morning, but the air still carried the scent of iron and algae, as if the river hadn't quite given up its ghosts. Cassandra arrived in silence. She always walked to river scenes. She preferred to approach slowly, like scent. Detective Reeve was already there, pacing with the irritation of a man who hated silence but didn't dare break it. No note this time, he muttered. No signature. Just the wrapping. And this. He handed her an evidence bag. Inside, a scrap of dark blue velvet. And wrapped inside that. A piece of pale silk. The texture was unmistakable. Smooth. Cold. Cassandra's throat tightened. She knew that fabric. It was hers. This came from my scarf, she said, her voice measured. Reeve blinked. You sure? It was custom dyed. There's no mistaking that shade. It's not cobalt. It's royal veil. My own blend. You had it with you? No. I lost it years ago. She didn't add, in Prague. She didn't need to. The body was female. Late 30s. Pale skin. No visible trauma. She was wrapped in a bolt of crushed blue velvet, head to toe, like a gift half unwrapped and then forgotten. The wrapping had been painstaking, as if someone wanted to ensure she remained untouched by the world. Cassandra stood just beside the body, letting her senses settle. Then she stilled. And frowned. She smells like nothing, she murmured. What? Reeve asked. Nothing, she repeated. No oil. No sweat. No trace of fear. Even in death, there's always something. But this body was scrubbed clean. Not embalmed like the last, no. This wasn't preservation. This was erasure. She crouched down, her gloved hand hovering just over the velvet, careful not to disturb it. There, between the folds, she saw it. A needle mark on the neck. Precise. Deliberate. And just under her left hand, a small scrap of paper, almost entirely dissolved by dew. Cassandra leaned closer. The only remaining legible word. Silence. She stood. He's removing things now, she said. What do you mean? In the first scene, he gave me scent. In the second, he gave me memory. Now, he's taken both away. She turned to the river. This isn't about bodies anymore. He's building a sensory palette. A composition. And I am the bass note he's trying to reach. Reeve shifted beside her. Is this guy in love with you or trying to kill you? Yes, she said, flatly. A siren howled faintly in the distance. Across the river, traffic resumed. London began to stir. But here, in the shadow of the bridge, Cassandra felt it more clearly than ever. He was getting closer. Not in proximity. In design. He was stripping away all excess. All distractions. Until only she remained. She reached into her coat pocket and removed her scent journal. On a fresh page, she wrote. Velvet, blue stillness. Null. Stolen memory. Then paused. And underlined one word. Stolen. Chapter 8, The Scent That Leads Her Home. The package arrived in silence. There was no knock. No courier. No return address. Just a small ivory box waiting on Cassandra Vale's doorstep, resting like an afterthought. She knew what was inside before she opened it. Because the air around it already carried the whisper of violets. Not real ones. Not quite. A blended reconstruction, delicate and intentional, like a scent remembered in a dream. She brought the box inside without gloves. Some things deserve to be touched, no matter the cost. Inside, a single glass vial, sealed with red wax and tied with a black ribbon. No note. No label. Just that scent. Cassandra uncapped it and let the air catch it. Powdered violet. Crushed pear skin. A whisper of garden smoke. Her spine went rigid. Not from fear. From recognition so deep, it hurt. Maison Marlowe. Violet number 3. Never released. The perfume had been custom blended in 1979. For her mother. No one outside the family ever wore it. No one else even had the formula. It was never sold. Her mother died with the last bottle on her nightstand, untouched for over 20 years. And now, here it was. Uncanny. Precise. Perfect. The killer hadn't just stolen something from her past. He had resurrected it. Cassandra stood for a long moment in the kitchen, holding the vial in one hand, the edge of the marble counter in the other. Then she turned on her heel, packed a single overnight bag, and made one call. Reeve. I'm going to Somerset. To your family's estate. To my mother's scent. The car ride was 3 hours, but it felt longer. Roads narrowed. Trees thickened. By the time the iron gates of the Vale estate came into view, Cassandra could already feel the shift in her breath. The air was different here. The wind carried memory like pollen. She passed the gardens first, the ones her mother designed but never truly tended. Lavender had overtaken the roses. Moss curled at the statue's feet. And the front door? Still painted the soft gray her mother preferred. Still bearing the brass knocker no one ever used. Inside, nothing had changed. Because she hadn't let it. The study. The solarium. The scent library her mother kept with old oils and tinctures no longer made. It was like walking back into a life she'd walled off. And now it waited, patiently, like grief with good posture. She entered the old scent room, located just off her mother's dressing chamber. It was small. Narrow. Lined in pale oak shelves with vials dating back to the 1800s. And there, on the center pedestal. She stopped breathing. A bottle sat upright, perfectly placed. Maison Marlowe, Violet No. 3. Uncorked. Open. Fresh. She had buried the original bottle with her mother. This was a replica, down to the hand-ground stopper, the oxidized edges of the label. She reached out. Touched it. Felt the cold glass pulse in her palm. And beside it, a single envelope. She opened it with a slow tear, as if speed would disrespect whatever memory had been dislodged. Inside, just one sentence. Handwritten. But not in ink. In scent. The paper had been dabbed with a delicate fingerprint of perfume, the oils arranged to form a latent phrase visible only under lamplight. She angled it gently, and the words surfaced in glossy gold. You said goodbye, but she never did. Cassandra stepped back. The air felt wrong. Off-center. Not threatening. But observed. Like someone had stood in this room last night. Breathing her past. Waiting for her to return. She didn't cry. Cassandra never cried. But she sat down on the velvet bench by the window. Let the vial rest in her hand. And closed her eyes. She remembered her mother's laugh. The perfume that clung to her gloves. The way she wore violet only when mourning something. And Cassandra whispered into the quiet. What are you mourning now? Outside, a single crow called from the hedgerow. And in the woods beyond the estate, someone turned away slowly. Their coat brushing against a tree trunk. Their hands smelling faintly of powdered violets and regret. Chapter 9, The Lavender Crime. The scent hit her before the door was even opened. Lavender. But too clean. Too bright. Artificial. Not the kind that wafted from a summer field, but the clinical, powdered precision of lab-designed absolution. Sanitized sorrow. Cassandra Vale closed her eyes and drew the scent deeper into her lungs. Not French. Not Bulgarian. Not even natural. This blend had been built. Detective Reeve met her outside the small boutique studio in Marylebone, arms crossed, phone buzzing furiously in his pocket. The owner's on vacation, he said. Someone broke in through the rear delivery entrance. No cameras. No alarm tripped. How was it discovered? Neighbor smelled something off. Sweet. Faint, wrong. They weren't wrong, Cassandra murmured. The interior of Maison Leclerc, once filled with rare essential oils, hand-milled soaps, and fragrance experiments, now resembled a shrine. The room was tidy. Candlelit. Quiet. But at the center of it, a woman's body. Laid out on a marble blending table like an offering. Hands folded. Lips painted a soft mauve. Wrapped in silk so pale it was nearly translucent. And around her, bottles. 12 of them. Arranged in a perfect circle. Cassandra stepped forward, ignoring the click of Reeve's boots behind her. She let her eyes drift over the scene like a brush over wet paint. The woman's throat bore no wound. No sign of injection. No blood. But her skin. Her skin was dusted in lavender pollen. Artificial. Bonded to something oil-based. Designed to last. And in her mouth. Not a flower. A cotton blotter. Perfumer's paper. The kind used in high-end fragrance houses to test uncut oils. Cassandra pulled a sample vial from her coat and gently clipped a strip of the blotter with gloved fingers. She held it to her nose. Then froze. The scent was not hers. Not exactly. But something about it was, intimately wrong. The balance of lavender and sandalwood. It was her blend. Her skin chemistry. But reversed. Tweaked. This isn't just copied, she said aloud. It's engineered. Reeve squinted at the scene. I don't follow. He built this from my trace samples. This scent wasn't stolen. It was grown. From my DNA. He synthesized your personal chemistry. Yes. He's mimicking how I smell when I wear regret. A silence fell. It wasn't disbelief. It was the horror of precision. Cassandra turned to the 12 bottles arranged around the body. Each was unlabeled. Empty. But one had a smudge on its rim, tiny, pink, almost invisible. She swabbed it. Pulled out a portable UV light. The smear glowed. Lip print. Female. She kissed the bottle before she died. Reeve swallowed hard. You think she knew what was happening? No, Cassandra replied. I think she thought she was saying goodbye. On the blending table's far corner, Cassandra spotted a slip of paper, half tucked beneath a scale used to measure oil weights. A typewritten line. Same font as the first note. But this time. I tried to make remorse that smelled like you. But you never wore it. Cassandra stood very still. He's failing, she whispered. He's trying to build grief. But it keeps turning into worship. She turned back to the victim. And this woman, she wasn't meant to be seen. She was meant to be understood. By me. Like he's waiting for me to say something. Say what? Reeve asked. That I forgive him. That I remember him. That I see what he's building and don't hate it. Cassandra reached into her coat again and pulled out her scent journal. On a new page, she wrote. Lavender, synthetic, a perfume of guilt that never belonged to him. Then, in smaller script beneath. But part of me still remembers when it could have. She closed the notebook. Her voice softened, just a whisper meant for the dead woman. You weren't supposed to be here. But now you are. And he's one note closer. Outside, the wind had shifted. And though it was late October, the air carried the dry, electric scent of something warming. Something moving toward fire. Chapter 10, A Visit to Her Former Therapist. Dr. Edwin Calloway's townhouse stood at the end of a narrow lane in Belgravia, cloaked in ivy and respectability. The kind of place that said privacy costs what it's worth. Cassandra Vale hadn't walked through that gate in 8 years. Not since she walked out in silence, abandoning the last half of her own sentence mid-thought. She hadn't needed him then. She wasn't sure she needed him now. But someone else had gotten to him first. The waiting room was as she remembered, sterile, restrained, rich. The scent of tea and paper lingered in the air, but there was something underneath it now. Something woodsy. Dry. A man's cologne. Oak moss and ambergris. But wrong for Calloway. She catalogued it automatically, even as the door opened and the doctor appeared, silver hair neatly swept, glasses perched perfectly. Cassandra, he said warmly. You look, as I imagined. You mean well-preserved, emotionally distant, and probably here for the wrong reasons. His smile didn't falter. Come in. The office hadn't changed either. Walls lined with books he never read, sculptures with more edge than grace. A Persian rug softened the sound of thought. Cassandra did not sit. She walked once around the room, then paused at the edge of the desk. You received something. It wasn't a question. Calloway sighed and reached for a drawer. He produced a sealed envelope. It came yesterday. No postmark. No return. Just my name. I wasn't sure if. He knew I'd come, she finished. She accepted the letter, gloved fingers brushing his briefly. The paper was cream-colored. Heavy. Expensive. A familiar choice. She opened it slowly. Inside, one folded sheet. Typed. She always looked most human after our sessions. Almost real. Thank you for dressing her in language. And underneath. A recipe. For a fragrance. Vetiver. Black tea. Violet leaf. Burnt sugar. Her hand froze. He remembers your room. The chair. The hour. What I wore. Cassandra, Calloway's voice dropped. There's more. He reached back into the drawer. Pulled out a small glass vial. Wrapped in gray ribbon. Unmarked. I haven't opened it. I knew he wanted me to. But I didn't. Good, she said. Because it's not for you. She turned the vial over in her palm. The glass was warm. Not from the room. From someone's skin. The oil inside shimmered faintly, like light caught on sorrow. She brought it to her nose. Closed her eyes. Then opened them again, colder. It's the blend I used to wear. The one I stopped making after Geneva. The vanishing violet, Calloway said softly. He's weaponized my grief. There was silence between them. Not awkward. Just ancient. Calloway finally broke it. He's not chasing you, Cassandra. I know. He's building you. Scene by scene. Note by note. He doesn't want me to find him. He wants me to arrive. She turned to the bookshelf. Ran a finger across the titles. Then stopped on one. A familiar one. A study in olfactory trauma, memory, scent, and the criminal mind. You still keep this? You wrote the foreword. I was 27 and full of ghosts. She opened the book to a page near the middle. And there, underlined in ink, was the passage she remembered. A scent can be a map. But it can also be a weapon. To those who remember too much, it is both. She closed the book gently. He's not using scent to taunt me. He's using it to rebuild me. So when we finally meet, I'll be exactly the version he remembers. Calloway stepped forward. You think you can out-profile him? She met his gaze. I don't need to. I just have to disappoint him. She turned for the door, then paused. Thank you, Edwin. For not opening it. Would it have hurt me? No. But it would have told him you were still useful. And I don't think he wants to share me anymore. Outside, the fog had thickened. The street lamps cast halos in the mist. And somewhere nearby, Cassandra could smell the faintest trace of burnt sugar and violet. The next note was already in the air. Chapter 11, The Killer Speaks in Oils. The auction house bore no sign. No address. Only a single brass door between a fishmonger and a shuttered tailor in Mayfair. Cassandra Vale gave her name to the attendant without flinching. They didn't ask for ID. They simply let her in. Inside, velvet hush. Gold trim. A scent of polished mahogany and discreet ambition. A whispering crowd wandered beneath soft lights and whispered ceilings, perfume collectors, perfumers, and the kind of men who paid thousands to smell like silence. She ignored them. She wasn't here for the oils. She was here for what had been mislabeled. Lot number 22. Vintage Oil, M. Vale, Archive, 1981. Provenance, Private Family Estate. Cassandra's blood turned still. Her mother's name. Her mother's birth year. But the description? All wrong. Base, patchouli, civet, frankincense. Top, galbanum, tarragon, clove. Heart, unknown. Unknown, she whispered. No one uses that word here. She raised her number. Bidding began. Cassandra didn't flinch as the price soared. At £12,000, the room grew still. At £13,500, someone at the back withdrew. At £15,000, the gavel fell. Sold. To her. She claimed the bottle personally, signing no name, offering no smile. It was small. Square. Clear glass. The oil inside, deep amber, viscous, untouched by time. Cassandra held it like a secret and walked out without looking back. She turned on no lights. She needed dark for this. A glass palette. A neutral blotter. Sterile gloves. She unsealed the bottle. The scent hit her in layers. And each layer told a memory. Not in order. Not as perfume should. But like fragments stitched into the air. First note, galbanum. Sharp. Green. Panic. The smell of the hospital hallway where her mother's body had been wheeled away. The scent of leaves crushed under desperate feet. She staggered slightly. Reset her breath. Second note, civet. Animalic. Musky. Familiar. The coat she wore when she testified against her first subject, when her voice didn't shake, but her soul did. Third note, clove and clary sage. Dry. Warm. Reassuring. The scent her lover once wore in Prague. The one who left her in the snow with a letter and no name. Each scent built on the last. This wasn't a perfume. It was a message. Constructed from Cassandra's emotional timeline. Moments only she would recognize. Moments he had collected. She sat down at her glass table and let the scent settle around her like music. And then, slowly, she realized. The structure mirrored her mother's fragrance. Same balance. Same base-to-top ratio. Only now, twisted. Rearranged. Turned inward. And at the very end. One final note. Burnt sugar and benzoin. A smell she hadn't encountered since the first time she cried. Alone. In the room with the mirror and the unlit candles. 16 years old. It wasn't just a message. It was a sentence. And like any sentence, it carried intent. I remember you, she whispered. But more than that. You remember everything I tried to forget. She placed the bottle back on the table, sealed tight. She didn't cry. Cassandra never cried. But she understood. This was not courtship. This was archiving. He was preserving her. Preparing her. Composing his final scent, note by note. And she was the last vial. Chapter 12, Cassandra's Past, framed in red. The gallery was small. New. Stylish. Gilded frame was the kind of boutique space that sold curated memories to collectors who couldn't name a single artist but could describe a canvas as haunting in a tasteful way. When the email arrived from an anonymous tip, a photograph of the painting in question, already hung and priced, it struck Cassandra harder than any body she'd seen. Because it was her room. Not any room. Her childhood bedroom. She didn't enter with haste. She never did. Cassandra stepped through the glass doors in tailored black, gloves on, scent restrained. The walls inside were white. Clean. Cold. But the moment she saw it, lot number 14, the air thickened. There it was. Framed in antique gold. Oil on canvas. 60 by 80. Titled. Study in Restraint, I. The gallery assistant began her practiced speech. This piece is from an anonymous donor. It sold in less than an hour. Buyer requested to remain confidential, but. Quiet, Cassandra said, her voice soft but firm. She stepped closer. The brushwork was familiar. Loose in some places, controlled in others. Edges soft. Shadows layered. The image was exact. Down to the white lace curtains. The faint stain on the floorboards where a childhood perfume bottle had shattered. The pages of the open book on the dresser. Her book. Her scent. Even the open window, slightly ajar, framing the night garden. He had painted it as if he'd stood there. Not imagined it. Seen it. She leaned in closer. And then she saw it. In the reflection of the vanity mirror, painted with the thinnest line of carmine oil. A figure. Half faded. Barely visible. Wearing a coat she owned. With hair pulled back like hers. Not her. But her shape. He didn't paint the room, she whispered. He painted my memory of it. The assistant cleared her throat awkwardly. Are you familiar with the artist? Intimately. Cassandra turned and walked the room's perimeter. Every other painting suddenly felt like noise. Background. White static. But lot #14 was alive. A message wrapped in oil and brushstroke. She circled behind the painting, as if expecting it to breathe. Then stopped. A small tag was taped to the back. Not the gallery's. Handmade. Typed. Red was always your restraint. You never painted with it, but you bled into it. This time, I used it for you. Cassandra folded the tag and slipped it into her coat pocket. Outside, the light was fading. The air smelled of petrol, waxed brick, and impending rain. But on her gloves. Still lingering. Turpentine. Oil. And violets. She pulled out her scent journal. Wrote. Red, oil observation through intimacy. Not violence. Not yet. But he knows where I bled. And now he's painting it better than I ever could. That night, she lay awake in her townhouse, windows locked, alarms active. But she still smelled it. Not the paint. Not the oils. The window. Slightly ajar. Chapter 13, the third scene, a choir of dead things. The Royal Caledon Opera House had been closed for 2 years. Restoration delays. Funding disputes. A cracked foundation that left the orchestra pit sealed behind warning tape and plastic sheeting. But tonight, the gates were open. And the air sang. Not with music. With stillness. The kind of stillness that hums after the final note of a requiem, where you can hear the blood in your ears, the breath of strangers, the world waiting to exhale. Cassandra arrived to find the front entrance unguarded. No forced entry. No broken locks. Just the perfume of old velvet, stone dust, and something feathery. It wasn't decay. Not quite. It was settling. Like something that had already died and was now getting comfortable. Detective Reeve met her at the end of the aisle, flashlight in one hand, mouth a tight line. I hope you're ready for this one. Define ready. He didn't answer. He led her down the crimson-carpeted stairs, through the crushed velvet curtains, into the dark belly of the theater. Then lifted the sheeting. Cassandra stepped beneath it. And froze. The orchestra pit had been turned into a cathedral of stillness. Laid across the floor in perfect concentric spirals. Birds. Dead. Every size. Every species. Each feather unbroken. Each wing folded. Each beak facing inward. And at the center, a woman. Young. Hair braided with silk ribbon. Eyes closed. Lips parted in silent song. No wounds. No blood. Her hands were clasped as if in prayer. And on her chest rested a small metal conductor's baton. It had been polished to a mirror-like gleam. Cassandra descended carefully into the pit. The air changed as she moved, heavier, colder. Birds carry scent in whispers, she thought. Dust. Down. Air woven into memory. She didn't need to speak. She simply knelt beside the body and breathed in. The woman had been an alto. Cassandra could tell by the position of her larynx, the width of the ribcage. She hadn't just been staged. She'd been invited to perform. There was no scent of death. Only a soft blend of iris root and myrrh, the kind used in old ecclesiastical perfumes, fragrance designed to anoint the soul, not mask the body. This isn't about murder, Cassandra said aloud. Then what the hell is it? Reeve asked, keeping his voice low. It's a dedication. She walked the edge of the spiral, following the pattern, counting each bird as if their silence formed lyrics. The spiral ended in a ribbon of silk, tied around a post in the pit wall. Something fluttered from beneath the knot. A piece of old sheet music. Scored for voice and chamber. But the title had been scratched out. And across the staff, in red fountain ink, someone had written. She sang the note you couldn't. Cassandra held the page and felt it, not anger. Not horror. Grief. Vivid. Tangled. Dangerous. I once trained to sing, she murmured. You. Reeve blinked. Briefly. I stopped after my mother died. I could match pitch, but not emotion. I could hit the note, but I couldn't feel it. She glanced down at the woman. Lips parted. Frozen mid-breath. He found someone who could. As she stood, she realized the birds weren't just arranged in spirals. They were grouped by color. Warm tones near the body. Cool tones near the walls. Bright yellow warblers furthest from reach. Like chords. Like harmony. She opened her scent journal. Wrote. Birds, breathless music. Feathered restraint. Arranged grief. Then paused. Added. This is his crescendo. He's not killing. He's composing. From the edge of the pit, Reeve called to her. We found something backstage. Let me guess, she said, brushing dust from her coat. A seat saved with my name on it. And indeed, they had. In the shadowed second row of the mezzanine, one seat bore a program. Hand-folded. Smelling faintly of lilac and ash. Inside it, a single page. Finale, Movement 4, Reunion. Key, Skin. Tempo, Slow exposure. Soloist, Veil, C. Duration, Until she knows. Chapter 14, The Gallery Invitation. The envelope was delivered by hand. No courier uniform. No signature required. Just a knock at Cassandra's townhouse door, and by the time she opened it, all that remained was a cream-colored envelope, sealed in crimson wax, resting on the welcome mat like a ritual. No return address. No name. But she knew. Of course she knew. She didn't need to open it. Because the scent had already bloomed across the air. Orris root. Sandalwood. Neroli. A breath of white pepper. The blend she wore only once. The night she almost killed a man. 9 years ago, Geneva. The subject was named Elias. Young. Gifted. Smiling in ways that never reached the eyes. She had profiled him. She had found him. And she had confronted him alone. The case had ended without violence. Officially. But that night, back in her room, she had stared into the mirror with blood beneath her fingernails and a single scratch across her cheek. And she had whispered. 1 more inch and I would have crossed the line. She never wore that scent again. Until tonight. She opened the envelope slowly, deliberately, like peeling back a dressing from a half-healed wound. Inside, a heavy, ivory card. Embossed lettering. Sharp serif font. Understated elegance. You are invited. 1-night exhibition. A study in absence. Location enclosed. Midnight viewing. 1 guest only. Beneath that, handwritten in graphite. This is where you left yourself behind. The space wasn't listed on any public directory. It existed beneath a florist's shop in Clerkenwell, closed at night, no cameras, no signage. Just a faint smell of lilies and ozone drifting through a stairwell that led into the earth. Cassandra descended alone. No reeve. No backup. No weapon. Only her gloves. Her scent journal. And the memory of who she almost became. At the bottom, a narrow hallway, candlelit and quiet. 3 red doors. 2 locked. The third slightly ajar. She pushed it open with the back of her hand. And stepped into a room built entirely for her. 1 space. 1 light. 1 painting. At the center of the room, on a black easel, stood a single canvas covered by a cloth of deep gray velvet. There were no signs. No guards. No other works. Just a single perfume blotter card resting at the base of the pedestal. She picked it up. The scent was unmistakable. Her guilt. Blended as scent. Precise. Just as she remembered it that night in Geneva. Not blood. Not adrenaline. Restraint burning at the edges. She reached up. Slowly. Removed the cloth. And stopped breathing. It was not a painting. It was a mirror, but distorted. Painted with reflective lacquer and oil, glazed and warped like a memory trying to look like truth. The image. Cassandra. Kneeling. Her gloved hand gripping a man's throat. His face, blurred. Her face, perfectly rendered. Not angry. Not horrified. Calm. Like justice had finally aligned with instinct. The frame was deep red. Not painted. Stained. From the smell alone, she knew what it was. Carmine pigment mixed with oxblood. This was not imagined. This was reconstructed. She looked around the room. Nothing else. No exit but the one she came in through. No signature. No brush strokes visible. Only the plaque on the wall beside the piece. Engraved with 1 word. Near. Cassandra stepped back. Wrote in her journal. Absence, the space between violence imagined and violence enacted. He knows how close I came. She looked at the mirror again and whispered. You're wrong. Then paused. But not by much. On her way out, as she passed the candlelit corridor, she noticed one candle flickering oddly, its flame dancing against something invisible. She stepped closer. etched faintly into the wax, only visible in the low light. Another word. Encore.
Every mystery leaves a mark. And the next case is already unfolding. If you enjoyed the story, subscribe, like, and share. There are more secrets waiting to be uncovered. Join us in the next chapter of A Study in Secrets.